I'd be happy to help. Here's the complete storytelling script in plain English, written as a heartfelt narration with no headings. Have you ever felt like your entire world was falling apart, only to discover that your greatest blessing was waiting just around the corner? Imagine losing your home, your savings, and almost everything you worked for after a painful divorce. Imagine standing in a courtroom, feeling completely defeated, wondering how you would provide for your child tomorrow. Now imagine that just when life seemed impossible, a billionaire woman stepped forward and revealed a secret that changed everything. Before we begin this incredible story, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment below. Your support helps Kindness Paradise bring more inspiring stories of hope, compassion, and life-changing kindness to people around the world. Michael Turner sat quietly on a worn-out bench outside the divorce courthouse in Chicago. The cold wind brushed against his face as he stared at the legal papers in his hands. His marriage of 12 years had ended that morning, and the court's decision had left him with almost nothing. The family house was gone. Most of his savings were gone. Even his small business had been divided during the settlement. All he had left was a modest apartment and custody of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Despite everything, Michael wasn't angry. He was heartbroken, but he refused to let bitterness take over his heart. As he walked home that evening, Lily held his hand tightly. "Dad," she said softly, "are we going to be okay?" Michael forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. As long as we are together, we'll always be okay." The truth was, he wasn't sure how they would survive. Bills were piling up. His business was struggling. Every night after Lily fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table worrying about the future. Yet every morning, he got up and kept going. One rainy afternoon, Michael noticed an elderly woman struggling to carry several grocery bags across a busy street. Cars rushed past without stopping. Without hesitation, Michael pulled over, grabbed an umbrella, and helped her safely across. The woman smiled warmly. "Thank you, young man. Most people are too busy these days." Michael shrugged. "It's just the right thing to do." The woman introduced herself as Evelyn Harper. For the next few weeks, Michael occasionally ran into Evelyn around town. He would help her carry groceries, fix small things around her house, or simply spend a few minutes talking with her. He never expected anything in return. What Michael didn't know was that Evelyn Harper was not an ordinary elderly woman. She was the founder of one of America's largest investment companies and one of the wealthiest self-made billionaires in the country. Despite her enormous fortune, she lived quietly and rarely revealed her identity. One evening, Evelyn invited Michael and Lily to dinner. At first, Michael felt uncomfortable accepting, but Evelyn insisted. During dinner, she listened carefully as Michael shared his struggles. He spoke honestly about the divorce, the financial losses, and his worries about raising Lily alone. Evelyn watched him closely. Most people who faced such hardships became bitter or selfish. But Michael's concern wasn't for himself. It was always for Lily. After dinner, Lily noticed a lonely janitor cleaning the community hall. Without saying a word, she carried over a slice of cake and handed it to him. The janitor's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he whispered. Evelyn smiled. In that moment, she understood exactly where Lily had learned kindness. Several days later, Evelyn invited Michael to her office downtown. When he arrived, he was shocked. The building carried the name Harper Global Investments. Employees greeted Evelyn with tremendous respect. Michael suddenly realized who she really was. He nearly dropped his coffee. "You own this company?" he asked. Evelyn laughed gently. "Yes, I do." Michael felt embarrassed. "If I had known, I never would have accepted all your invitations." "That's exactly why I never told you," Evelyn replied. She led him into a conference room overlooking the city skyline. Several attorneys and financial advisors were waiting. Michael became nervous. "Evelyn, what's going on?" She placed a folder on the table. Years earlier, before Michael's divorce, his late grandfather had invested in a small technology startup. The investment had been forgotten for decades. After numerous company mergers and acquisitions, those original shares had become ownership in several major technology corporations. The records had become buried beneath layers of paperwork and legal transfers. Recently, Evelyn's investment team discovered the forgotten account while reviewing old financial archives. The rightful heir was Michael Turner. Michael stared at the documents in disbelief. "This can't be real." One attorney nodded. It is real. His forgotten inheritance was now worth several $billions. Michael sat speechless. Just weeks earlier, he had worried about paying rent. Now he was one of the wealthiest individuals in the country. Tears filled his eyes. But what happened next surprised everyone. His first question wasn't about the money. It wasn't about luxury homes or expensive cars. Instead, he asked, "Can this help my daughter have a better future?" Evelyn smiled. That answer told her everything she needed to know. Over the following months, Michael's life changed dramatically. But wealth didn't change his heart. He purchased a comfortable home for Lily. He expanded his business and created hundreds of jobs. He established scholarships for single parents returning to school. He funded housing programs for families facing homelessness. He paid medical bills for struggling children. And every year, he anonymously donated millions to community organizations across the country. One day, a reporter asked him the secret behind his generosity. Michael thought for a moment. Then he said, "When I lost everything, I learned what really matters. People remember kindness long after they forget money. A simple act of kindness can change someone's entire life." Years later, Lily grew up and joined her father's charitable foundation. Together, they continued helping thousands of families. Whenever people praised Michael for his generosity, he always told the same story. He spoke about a rainy afternoon, an elderly woman carrying groceries, and a small decision to help someone without expecting anything in return. Because that simple act of kindness had opened a door he never knew existed. The truth is, kindness often works in ways we cannot see. We may never know how deeply our actions affect others. A helping hand, a kind word, or a moment of compassion can create ripples that travel farther than we ever imagine. Michael thought he had lost everything in divorce court. But in reality, he had never lost the most valuable thing he possessed, his kind heart. And in the end, that kindness led him to a future greater than anything he could have dreamed. If this story touched your heart, remember that every act of kindness matters. You don't need billions of dollars to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is a few minutes, a caring gesture, or a willingness to help when nobody else will. Thank you for watching Kindness Paradise. Until next time, keep spreading kindness, because the world always needs more of it. Here's a completely different version of the story script. Have you ever watched someone lose everything they work for and wondered how they would ever recover? Imagine standing alone outside a courthouse with an empty bank account, a broken heart, and a child depending on you for everything. Most people would call that the end of the story. But what if it was actually the beginning? What if a simple act of kindness toward a stranger uncovered a secret worth billions of dollars? And what if the person who changed your life forever was one of the richest women in America? Before we begin this incredible story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Paradise, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us continue sharing heartwarming stories that remind us how powerful kindness can be. Daniel Parker never imagined that one judge's decision could change his life so dramatically. At 42 years old, Daniel walked out of a divorce courtroom in Dallas, Texas, feeling completely defeated. The divorce had been long, stressful, and expensive. By the time everything was finalized, he had lost his family home, most of his savings, and nearly all the assets he had spent years building. The only thing he truly cared about was his 10-year-old son, Ethan. Daniel had been granted primary custody, but that responsibility came with enormous challenges. Every month became a struggle. Rent, groceries, school expenses, and utility bills seemed to grow faster than his income. Many nights Daniel sat awake after Ethan had gone to sleep, staring at unpaid bills spread across the kitchen table. Still, every morning he put on a smile for his son. "Dad, are we okay?" Ethan asked one evening. Daniel looked at him and smiled. "We are together, buddy. That's what matters." The truth was that Daniel wasn't sure everything would be okay. But he refused to let his son see his fear. One cold Saturday morning, Daniel and Ethan stopped at a small diner for breakfast. As they waited for their food, Daniel noticed an elderly woman sitting alone near the window. She accidentally dropped her purse, and several items scattered across the floor. Most customers glanced over and then returned to their meals. Daniel immediately stood up and helped gather her belongings. Ethan joined him. Together they picked up her glasses, wallet, and a few family photographs. The woman smiled warmly. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to do that." Daniel shrugged. My father taught me that helping people is never optional." The woman seemed touched by his words. Her name was Victoria Reynolds. Over the next several weeks, Daniel and Victoria crossed paths several times. Sometimes it happened at the diner. Sometimes at a nearby park. Victoria was friendly and enjoyed talking with Ethan. Daniel assumed she was simply a retired grandmother enjoying life. What he didn't know was that Victoria Reynolds was one of the most successful investors in America. Her companies were worth billions. Yet she preferred living quietly and avoided public attention whenever possible. One afternoon, Victoria's car broke down outside a grocery store. Daniel happened to be nearby. Without hesitation, he spent 2 hours helping her arrange repairs and making sure she got home safely. Victoria repeatedly offered him money for his help. Each time Daniel politely refused. "I wasn't helping because I wanted something," he said. "I was helping because you needed help." Those words stayed with Victoria. Months later, she invited Daniel and Ethan to a charity banquet. Daniel almost declined because he didn't own a proper suit. When Victoria learned this, she simply laughed and told him to come anyway. The evening felt completely different from anything Daniel had ever experienced. Business leaders, celebrities, and wealthy investors filled the ballroom. Everyone seemed to know Victoria. As Daniel watched people greet her with admiration, he slowly realized she was far more important than he had imagined. Near the end of the event, Victoria asked Daniel to meet her privately. Inside a conference room, several attorneys and financial advisors were waiting. Daniel immediately felt nervous. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. Victoria smiled. "Not at all. In fact, this may be the most important conversation of your life." One attorney placed a thick file on the table. The documents revealed a shocking discovery. Years earlier, Daniel's grandfather had owned shares in a small oil and energy company. After his grandfather passed away, the ownership records became lost during multiple company mergers. For decades, nobody realized those shares still existed. Recently, Victoria's investment team uncovered the forgotten ownership records while reviewing historical transactions. The legal beneficiary was Daniel Parker. Daniel stared at the paperwork. His hands trembled. He struggled to understand what he was reading. Finally, he looked up. "How much is it worth?" The room became silent. One advisor answered carefully. "Approximately $3.8 billion. Daniel thought he had misheard. "Billion." The advisor nodded. Daniel sat frozen. Just months earlier, he had worried about buying groceries. Now he was being told he was worth billions. Tears filled his eyes. Victoria quietly handed him a tissue. Then she asked a question she would never forget. "What will you do with it?" Daniel didn't mention luxury cars. He didn't talk about private jets. Instead, he said, "I want to make sure Ethan never worries about money. And I want to help families who are struggling like we were." Victoria smiled. That answer confirmed everything she believed about him. Money had changed Daniel's circumstances, but it hadn't changed his heart. Over the next few years, Daniel transformed countless lives. He established programs for single parents facing financial hardship. He funded after-school programs for children in low-income neighborhoods. He created scholarships for students who couldn't afford college. He donated millions to food banks across the United States. Thousands of families received help because one man remembered what it felt like to struggle. One day, a reporter asked Daniel why he gave away so much of his fortune. Daniel thought about the difficult days after his divorce. He remembered the fear, the uncertainty, the sleepless nights. Then he remembered Victoria. He remembered the kindness that connected two strangers from completely different worlds. Finally, he answered, "Kindness saved me long before money did. A caring heart can change someone's future. Wealth only gave me a bigger opportunity to do the same for others." Years later, Daniel and Ethan continued their charitable work together. Whenever people praised Daniel's success, he always shared the same lesson. You never know who needs your help. You never know whose life you might change. And you never know how one small act of kindness can come back in ways you never imagined. The world often tells us that money is the greatest treasure. But stories like Daniel's remind us of a deeper truth. Kindness is the real wealth. It costs nothing to give, yet its value can be priceless. So the next time you see someone who needs a helping hand, don't walk away. Offer a smile. Share a kind word. Lend your support. Because every act of kindness creates a ripple, and those ripples can travel farther than we ever see. Thank you for watching Kindness Paradise. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Until next time, remember that kindness has the power to change lives, including your own.